It gives me much pleasure to participate in this conference in honor of Alex, a great economist who is never short of questions. He is a long-time friend and colleague with whom I did a number of papers and held numerous discussions on economics, politics, and whatnot. My assignment in this conference is the discussion of the Orphanides paper. In this and related papers by Orphanides and Williams, the authors stress the role of learning process. Indeed, recently, the rational expectations approach has been supplemented by a learning process in the usual case of imperfect knowledge. The point is that the wrong perception of the model or the natural rates of unemployment and the interest rate influences the observed outcomes and therefore require a convergent learning process that will bring the conception back to reality. Sargent remarks in connection with the US inflation that there are always theorists like Friedman and Phelps who do not need the learning process to see the correct model. But politicians and the public require proof, and rightly so, in order to justify the change in monetary rules, and this proof is supplied to them by the learning process. In the present paper, the authors deal with the learning process which updates the coefficients of the structural equations periodically using a constant gain technique which enables perpetual learning. They show that the economic dynamics are significantly different when a learning process is taking place as compared with the rational expectations with perfect knowledge. The importance of this distinction is dramatized by another paper where the authors show that in the 70s, when the natural rate of unemployment rose, it was underestimated. The effort of maintaining unemployment at a lower level than the true natural rate led to the great inflation in the US in the 70s, which could have been avoided, according to the authors, had the policy design been different. In view of this experience, the authors propose a modification of the Taylor rule, which was stated originally in terms of levels. They suggest that a rule which is based on differences or rates of change is more robust to errors in measuring the natural rates, since it does not require the knowledge of the levels of the natural rates. The differencing applies to the interest rate and to unemployment, but it does not relate to the inflation gap. However, Woodford, in a recent book, shows that the forward solution to a similar version of the Taylor rule, together with the Fisher equation, does in fact converge. For the sake of completeness, I think that this property should be established for the difference rule mentioned in this paper. The use of the difference rule involves a certain loss of information. Thus, if the natural rates jump to a new plateau, this is not reflected fully in the difference rule. But the recommendation of the authors is based on the assumption that the natural rate of unemployment does not change much over time. The authors implicitly assume that the potential loss of information is less significant than the likely errors involved in the use of the levels version of the Taylor rule. This view seems to be confirmed by the simulation. Essentially, there appear to be two types of possible errors. One type of error is in measuring the true value of the natural rates, which are not observed directly. And the other type is the misperception of the economic model itself. It seems that the authors emphasize mainly the former type. However, there is an interaction between the two, and maybe that the change in the perception about the model reduces the significance of errors in the measurement of the natural rates. Thus, it is possible that the underestimation of the natural rate of unemployment in the 70s had an influence on the interest rate of the Fed in that period, because the stance of monetary policy was activist. But once the lessons from that period have been learned, and the conception of the model has been changed accordingly, there is less significance to the misperception of the natural rates. This consideration is even more forceful since the authors admit that the misperceptions of the natural rates decreased in the 90s. Although I sympathize with the proposed change in the monetary rule because of the elusive concepts of the natural rates, I doubt whether much can be gained at present by the proposed change in view of the more cautious stance of monetary policy now. Thank you.